You're listening to the 49 Carats Podcast, a 49ers Goldmine production with Stephanie Sanchez.
What's going on, everyone? Welcome to another edition of the 49 Carats Podcast. I'm your host, Steph. It is Wednesday, January 8th. And you may also be tuning in from Gold Standard Network as well, because joining me today is Rob Stats Guerrera for our last Wednesday show of the season, because we're officially in the offseason. The 49ers are holding their end-of-season press conference with John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan, which is set to start any moment now. And Rob and I will be reacting live and sharing the most notable quotes from the presser. We are expecting that they will officially announce the firing of special teams coordinator Brian Schneider, and moving on from defensive coordinator Nick Sorensen. But first, hello, Rob, and thanks for joining me. Never a dull moment here, right?
No, the 49ers never make it boring. I'll say that, even when they're not winning.
Yeah, exactly. So we're going to keep tabs on when this presser does officially go live. In the meantime, let's give you guys a quick recap of the past week for the 49ers. It's been eventful, if nothing less. So Monday, we found out that the 49ers fired special teams coordinator Brian Schneider. Tuesday, we got word that the 49ers scheduled their presser for today, Wednesday. And shortly after that, we found out that they were planning to move on from Nick Sorensen as defensive coordinator. Now, you'll notice I didn't say fired, because I think they still want to find a place for Nick Sorensen on this team. And of course, Wednesday, as of this morning, we did get a report that the 49ers are expected to offer the defensive coordinator position to Robert Saleh. Let's just jump right into that one, Rob. This one came from Josina Anderson this morning. You know, of course, she also mentioned that Robert Saleh is getting interest for head coaching positions. He's going to be interviewing with the Jaguars. And she didn't say another team, but she did say that he's going to be interviewing sometime thereafter that Jags interview. So there is another, I guess, mystery team in the Robert Saleh sweepstakes for head coach. Now, she also mentioned the 49ers are expected to make him an offer at defensive coordinator. So this one's interesting because, I mean, by making him an offer, and of course, he doesn't need an interview for the 49ers, like he's already had the job. By saying, though, that he's going to get the offer, it almost seems like he's the first and maybe even only candidate for the position.
Right. It's not like they're going to interview Robert Saleh. They're expected to offer him the job. Now, who knows? Maybe this is Robert Saleh talking to Josina, and he expects the 49ers to offer him the job. I have no idea. I will say this. I wish that the 49ers would talk to a wide variety of candidates, consider all schemes and all defenses. Don't just pigeonhole yourself into the wide nine and into like the quote unquote 49ers defense. But if you are determined to stick with the 49ers defense and do that thing, this is the guy I would want running it, right? I would want D'Amico, but you're not getting D'Amico because he's the head coach of the Texans. So if you can't get D'Amico, Saleh would be the guy that I would want. I just would like to see them at least explore other schemes and other options first.
Yeah, and it seems like Kyle Shanahan, you know, this presser has started rolling. John Lynch, by the way, opened the presser by, you know, sending some thoughts and prayers to the people of Los Angeles. There's a crazy fire going on there right now, and we too here also extend some prayers out to them, because very scary situation happening in the Los Angeles area. One thing Kyle Shanahan also mentioned, he said, quote, "I feel there's some options out there. I feel like would be a better option for where we are as a team," talking about the, defensive coordinator position. And I find this interesting because I do feel like part of the reason that they moved on from Nick Sorensen, or felt like it was a good time, was because they started seeing some of the candidates that were becoming available. And I think that ultimately, pushed them over the edge of saying, we have to pursue these options.
I agree. I think it was a smart thing to do. It's part of the reason that Sorensen is the guy, or was the guy last year, is because they didn't fire Steve Wilkes till after the Super Bowl, after everybody had already picked over all the good coaching candidates. There weren't that many left. That's why they went after Belichick, who was unemployed, Spagnuolo, who was also in the Super Bowl, and then Jeff Ulbrich, who was currently employed with the Jets, and they got blocked. So they didn't have a lot of good options. Now they do. I also just saw that Kyle said Brandon Staley is going to get a shot at potentially defensive coordinator.
Boy.
Internal
Oh
candidates.
boy.
Yeah, Kyle Shanahan said he will give Brandon Staley a shot. If they go Staley, there will be a revolt.
I don't like that. I mean, I don't think any of us like that, right? Just because we don't really know what Brandon Staley's role even was this season, aside from the fact that he had the ball meetings, which were the meetings that the team had to emphasize turnovers on both sides of the ball. Nick Sorensen used to run those meetings before he became defensive coordinator. I think we know with the lack of turnovers for the 49ers defense this season, that doesn't make me feel so good about Brandon Staley suddenly getting a promotion to defensive coordinator, because again, we don't really know what he had to do. Just want to get to the super chat really quick. For the Big 25, rather get Lou and Arumu. His scheme gave Mahomes and Jackson problems. Stop with hiring a yes man that's forced to run wide nine scheme. BS. Yeah, I think that's part of it. Like, there's a lot of fans who feel like, man, we should be going away from what we've done since 2017 because maybe it has run its course. Where are you on that?
I completely agree. Like, you're going to bring in Robert Saleh, then does he have to keep Chris Kasarik and all the coaches that are already here? Like, there were problems with this defense, and it wasn't just the injuries that the team suffered. It was schematic problems. They've been running the same defense for a half a decade, yet every time every team went to trips, bunch, wide receivers, the 49ers had no idea what to do. And they run one of the least complicated defensive schemes in the league, yet the 49ers were the ones that were confused. The opposing offenses had no problem dissecting and figuring out what the 49ers were running on defense. It was bad. It was bad all around. And Steph, if nothing ever changes, nothing ever changes. Like, you can't want this defense to improve, but then change nothing. Like, I don't like that. Please don't pigeonhole yourself. Look everywhere. I just saw a good quote from Kyle Shanahan, who said, I'm not saying you have to change schemes, but you have to have the ability, the history, and the knowledge to change stuff up when you are in certain situations. He mentioned how difficult it was with the 49ers personnel on defense. That, to me, was kind of what Brandon Staley was known for. Not saying, I'm just saying.
Yeah, and for everyone tuning in, I just wanted to say there is no live presser on the 49ers YouTube or website. So all of the information that we're getting is coming from Twitter. That's coming from the beat writers who are there. Now, that's an interesting decision, right? Not making this presser available to the fans and, kind of funneling through from beat writers. Now, I did want to share this. Kyle Shanahan said that Nick Sorensen is under consideration for special teams coordinator. This was something that was floated around from some of the beat writers, even, within the last day or so when we found out that Sorensen wouldn't be returning as defensive coordinator. One of the things that Matt Mayoko said in his YouTube video after the Nick Sorensen news, he said, quote, "It's certainly within the realm of possibility that the 49ers could target Sorensen to be their special teams coordinator." He was the Jacksonville Jaguars special teams coordinator back in 2021. I believe that unit ended up ranking 24th or 26th or something like that. So I mean, that's still an improvement, right, from this past season. Can you really get any worse than the 49ers special teams this past year? I mean, I'm open to it, but it kind of feels like you're playing musical chairs now with your coaching positions just for the sake of wanting to keep Sorensen around.
What is so special about Nick Sorensen that you're so scared to get rid of him? He had nothing as a defensive coordinator. Nothing. Remember when they asked him before the season, why'd you get this job? And he said, I don't know. I was here. There's nothing there. Okay. And the Jags special teams sucked in 2021 under Urban Meyer. And by the way, do you know how Nick Sorensen got that job as special teams coordinator in 2021?
Ow.
The current special teams coordinator resigned right before the season, and Sorensen took over. And do you know who that special teams coordinator was in 2021 that resigned? Guess.
Was it, I forget, was it Richard Hightower or someone who had connection to the, it was Schneider. Okay. Yeah.
The guy that he's replaced. Oh my God. No, get rid of him. Get rid of Nick Sorensen. Okay. You don't need him. Get a special teams coordinator that has years of doing it and years of doing it really well. Okay, go find that guy. Why? What was this obsession with promoting from people that are already here? There's a whole universe of people out there to choose from. Choose the best guy for the job.
Yeah, I mean, I will say, like, the 49ers do tend to, walk in around the same circles of, people that or coaches that they already know, or connections to people that they already know. So yeah, it would be nice if they kind of went outside. In fact, like, Steve Wilkes was maybe the most outside hiring that we've seen this 49ers team under Kyle Shanahan go towards, right? And I wonder if, like, the way that ended kind of made them feel like, well, that's why I don't usually go with people outside of who I normally know, or outside of my tree. But, Nick Sorensen also did not work out. So as we know right now, Nick Sorensen is still under contract with the 49ers, just not in the capacity of defensive coordinator. And so, yeah, they'll hope to keep him around, and we'll see how that shakes out. A couple of other pieces of news that we're getting from this presser. John Lynch described Trent Williams' injury as a bruise in the ankle joint, and has begun to improve recently. So that's good news, but that seemed like a very painful injury for Trent Williams. You recall, like, he was using a scooter to walk around or move around in the facility. And so it's good news that that's improving, but man, that certainly ended up being a lot worse than what we originally thought for Trent.
He's had ankle issues in the past. And the fact that it just hasn't really healed, that's a scary thing to me, because this doesn't seem like something that's like a one-off, right? He's had ankle issues in the past. Now he's got more. Now it's not healing. He hasn't been able to play a full season in a really long time as it is. The 49ers, I think re-signing Jalen Moore has to be a massive priority for them this offseason.
Yeah, we'll see if they do that. I do feel like Jalen Moore has filled in that role pretty admirably. So we'll see if they could afford his services if they elect to do that. Let me get to the super chat here from Beats and Meats. Great name. The Chiefs are the Chiefs, partially because Spagnuolo refuses to leave to be a bad head coach somewhere else. Maybe Saleh would be happy to do the same with Kyle. By the way, Spagnuolo getting some interviews this cycle. Raiders was the last that I saw reported for Spags. So
Jets
probably
too.
Jets as well. So it probably won't be the last time as well that we hear his name be mentioned in head coaching cycles. But I do think that's part of it. Like, Rob, I slammed the table for the 49ers to have a defensive coordinator that can feel like a mainstay, someone who has been a head coach and has been so bad at it that most teams will be like, no, thank you. You can stay where you are as a defensive coordinator. I think that's the best case scenario. And I think Spags is the best example of that, and how that has worked out so well for them. You have so much continuity each and every year. You can make wrinkles and new improvements to the defense that you have already built with that team, with the same personnel, more or less every season. So I think it's worked out perfect for the Chiefs. I would love nothing more than the 49ers to have that same opportunity. And yeah, maybe Saleh could be that option, although he is getting, like I said, some head coaching interest this cycle as well.
I don't think he's going to get any of the jobs, quite frankly. I don't think that he's got interviews, but I don't think that anything he did with the Jets was so good that teams are going to immediately scoop him up after he's fired. I think he's the kind of guy that's going to have to get a DC job somewhere. It might not be San Francisco. And then maybe in a couple of years, people will say, you know what, he deserves another shot. He's still incredibly young, so there's plenty of time for that. But I just like, what did Robert Saleh do with the Jets, where you're like, that's the guy we got to go get immediately. He's on the market. We can pick him up. Like, I don't see it.
Yeah, I mean, definitely one of the things, like, their defense definitely improved. And if you look at the numbers for that Jets defense after he left, like, they definitely suffered after he was let go. So, I mean, you can equate that to Saleh being the reason, but of course that still goes back to defense being the best thing that he does, right? So yeah, I think he's obviously at the top of the list for the 49ers, I think Jeff Ulbrich is another name that gets thrown around by beat reporters often enough that it can't just be a coincidence, right? I think that's someone who the 49ers have liked since last offseason. That was one of the people that they were interested in. Jets blocked it at the time. And so if he becomes available, which I think we're expecting at some point this offseason, maybe in the next couple of weeks, then, he is an option for them as well. Here's another quote from John Lynch, speaking on Brock Purdy this time. He said, quote, "What we know about Brock is that he's our guy. We have interest in him being around for a long, long time," end quote. And it kind of feels like, when you hear what Brock had to say in the locker room a couple of days ago, the clean out day, he kind of said, like, I know that I'm the guy, like, for San Francisco. So it kind of feels like there's already been conversations, shared with Brock that, hey, like, we're committed to you and we're going to make something happen here. So, I mean, hopefully that's a good sign that maybe this gets done in a quicker fashion than some other contracts have in recent years.
Good. If that's what you decide, then get it done and stop screwing around. Okay. Like, everybody has their position on Brock, whether he should be or shouldn't be. What matters is what they think. If they think he's the guy, then get it done by the new league year. Get it done by March before free agency, so you know exactly what your budget is, exactly how much you have to spend, and you can go from there. I hate uncertainty. And when you're trying to plan anything, uncertainty is just a huge monkey wrench in all those plans. So great. Sounds like everybody's on the same page. Brock has said he wants to get it done as fast as possible. We know the market. We know the ballpark. It really shouldn't be that hard. Honestly, it should take less than a week. It really shouldn't be that difficult. Get it done.
Yeah, hopefully they do get it done. I mean, there's a lot of incentive for just like the team continuity, team building, having all those pieces together, especially the quarterback, by the time any off-season workouts begin. And usually that's in the spring. The draft is in the spring as well. So I do expect that the 49ers will act quickly on this. Now, as far as Dre Greenlaw, who, is a pending free agent, Kyle Shanahan said, quote, "We don't even know yet. I can't always tell them exactly what their future is going to be. The day the season ends, that's tied to a lot of other people," end quote. Other people, one of those people could very well be Brock, right? Like, I mean, I think Brock being maybe one of the first dominoes to fall could impact, what they could allocate towards Dre Greenlaw or any of the other free agents. And not just that, but like with the 49ers letting go of their defensive coordinator and finding a new one, I mean, you kind of have to, make decisions towards who you're going to keep with that in mind. I mean, you kind of have to wait for the defensive coordinator to maybe give the nod or give some input at the very least as to who he wants the personnel to be. So, maybe that's part of it.
I completely agree. I think DC is a huge impact on the scheme and the personnel they go after. Also, the Niners may have said, "Hey, Dre, we want you, but we're only going to pay you X amount. Go on the market, see if you can get more. If you can, great. If not, we'd love to have you back." And they won't know the results of that until obviously free agency, or at least the combine, when all the agents start tampering. But so it might just take time.
Yeah, and he also added, quote, "We're not into losing really good players who are unbelievable people," end quote, when speaking about Greenlaw. And the reason that, like, people have been wondering about Greenlaw is because there's been a lot of talk, particularly from, significant others of Greenlaw and Warner, for example, hinting that, maybe this is the last of Greenlaw. But again, it's because like he's a free agent, and maybe so far the conversations haven't, led themselves to think that Greenlaw will be back. But that doesn't mean that he won't be back. But certainly right now, it does look like he's going to be testing free agency. The way I believe that's going to go, I mean, there has to be other teams that are going to be interested in Greenlaw this offseason. I could think of, D'Amico Ryans, for example, reuniting him with Aziz. I mean, I think that'd be a slam dunk move for the Texans. And I can't imagine there won't be other teams interested in Greenlaw. So that'll make it very tough for the 49ers to retain him if, in fact, he does go into free agency.
Completely agree with you. I'm just skimming 49ers Twitter as you're talking. seeing just a variety of comments. And one thing that dawned on me, because I keep seeing people talking about Nick Sorensen being a special teams candidate. The fact that they are not just moving on from Nick Sorensen means they know they put him in a position to fail last year. It means they knew he wasn't ready, but they didn't have any other options, and so they stuck him in there. And now they feel bad, so they're not firing him. They're putting him back in a position he's more suited to, which could possibly be special teams coordinator. That's not good business, man.
I think it's kind of a two-way street too, because I think Nick Sorensen doesn't strike me as the kind of guy that's like a strong personality that would be like, you know what, F you guys, I don't want to be on this team anymore because you put me in this position. So I think luckily for the 49ers, it could be a win-win scenario where, we know we messed up, but we still want you around. And Nick Sorensen is like, okay, yeah, like you did, but I'm willing to stay around too. And we'll see again, what that position will eventually be for Nick Sorensen if he does end up sticking around for sure. But yeah, I mean, I think it's a two-way street, and Nick Sorensen obviously has to or had to agree to stay with the 49ers if that's what they're going to end up doing. The one question I have, which I haven't seen so far, if anyone has asked a question about Brandon Staley, because there hasn't been any word on whether or not he's going to be I guess sorry, we did talk about that actually, that Brandon Staley is going to be considered for DC. So my bad, but
we don't know what he did last year.
We don't know what he did.
The ball meeting, which is I
don't like that.
Yeah, they couldn't force.
Hope he's at the end of the end of the list, and there definitely are some names. In fact, Matt Barrows put out a piece this morning on The Athletic, just naming a couple of candidates, for the defensive coordinator position. He listed Daniel Bullocks. That's the current 49ers DB coach. Patrick Graham, who's the Raiders defensive coordinator right now. Durante Jones, who's the Vikings pass game coordinator. That's an intriguing one, I think. Chris Richard, the Jags DB coach. Mike Saravo, the Vikings inside linebackers coach. So again, looking at the Vikings. And of course, he also mentioned Saleh, Brandon Staley, Jeff Ulbrich, and he also mentioned Jason Tarver, the Browns linebackers coach. So there's definitely a lot of options for the 49ers out there. And like we said, we do believe that the list of candidates who are available did influence the 49ers decision to ultimately move on from Nick Sorensen. I thought it was interesting. Barrows didn't mention Lou Anarumo, which I think would be a great option as well for the 49ers. Gus Bradley is another name that gets mentioned quite a bit. But yeah, there's a long list of names. Do you have a preference, Rob, from all these guys mentioned?
I can't honestly say that I do. Staley scares me a little just because his big success was 1 year with the Rams, and it was one season. I know they were really good, but that's a pretty small sample size. I'll say this about the Barrows list, though. He's not just picking the names out of a hat and saying, these are the candidates. I'm sure he's talked to people around the 49ers. I'm sure he's talked to maybe some of the coaches that he has relationships with. If a name is on that list, it's on there for a reason. And then if a name is not on that list, I think it's not on there for a reason as well.
Now, shifting over to the offensive side of things, Kyle Shanahan said in this presser, Clay Kubiak will officially be promoted to offensive coordinator with the 49ers. And as we know, the only other former 49er coach who had that title in the past was Mike McDaniel. So it seems like Clay Kubiak taking a similar path to McDaniel at this point. And I think that kind of, confirms our suspicions that, with Shanahan giving Kubiak the opportunity to play calls a couple of times, or call plays a couple of times in the preseason, and also in Week 18, that it was with the intention of giving Kubiak some of that experience, and also just helping his resume out a little bit.
Yeah, Kyle said that Clay Kubiak was effectively the offensive coordinator last year without the title. I think his official title was offensive passing game specialist or whatever it was. Now he gets the title. I know with Mike McDaniel, a big part of this was getting the weekly press conference. that because McDaniel specifically said he wanted that because he didn't want to be a secret anymore. And this could be, Kyle doing Clay Kubiak a solid. He gets the press conference now. Owners get to see him out there. He gets more pub as the offensive coordinator, all that stuff. I don't expect much to change in terms of how the 49ers offense works. Kyle's still going to be calling the plays, as he said. I know some people I think were, wanting Kyle to have an OC because they thought he was stretched too thin. I don't think he's stretched any less by naming Clay Kubiak the offensive coordinator. The silly putty is still pulled just as much as it always was, but good. Is this, in your mind, Steph, showing growth from the 49ers? They're changing special teams coordinators. They're changing defensive coordinators. Kyle is adding an offensive coordinator, at least in title only. Like, is any of that encouraging to you, or do you think it's kind of business as usual?
Yes and no. I think like this, for example, can show some growth. I think it shows that there's an openness to have other guys involved in the game planning and play calling and, scheming things up, which like Kyle has shown that in the past already by having Mike McDaniel in those roles in the past. But, with new faces having that opportunity now, I think it does show a little bit of growth in that regard. I think like for the defensive side of things, like, it's too much change. I mean, this is going to be the fourth defensive coordinator in as many seasons. And that shows a little bit of instability at the coordinator position. And I want nothing more than defensive coordinator to be stabilized. Like, and that should be part of what they consider when making their decision. It needs to be someone, you can have here for more than one season. Like, please. And sorry, I want to get to a couple of these super chats here. Okay. So Daza says, why do we keep on wanting to run it back? Maybe they should evaluate if they should continue with wide 9 and widen the net on DC hires. That's exactly what we've been saying. The 49ers love to go towards, what's known and what's comfortable for them. Mm-hmm. And yeah, I think me and Rob are definitely open to the team looking at outside people, looking at different schemes and things like that. Alejandro Sandoval says, I know the NFL is a business, but I was at the Seattle game in 2019 where Dre Greenlaw got the stop at the goal line. If he leaves, that's going to suck. Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I think every 49er fan knows that if Greenlaw's gone, that's definitely going to be some big shoes to fill in this defense, which is kind of another thing. Like, if you're going to continue running this wide 9, you need to replenish the defensive line. You need to have strong linebackers. Mm-hmm. So it's not just let's get a new defensive coordinator and all will be fixed. Like, there's so much more that goes into making this defense, back to where it used to be. That will also involve the draft and free agency and all that.
And also, they re-signed 2019 Dre Greenlaw already. Like, they signed that guy to another deal. 2019 Dre Greenlaw is long gone. That's not the guy that's going to be walking out the door if the 49ers don't re-sign him. So, yeah, I get that people are attached to names and players and all of that stuff, but it's not the same person. Times have changed. Just like it's not the same roster that Robert Saleh had in 2019. It's 2025 now. It's not the same. So, like, if you think that Robert Saleh is just going to come in and they're going to be good and it's all going to be champagne and strawberries, I got news for you. It's not. Dee Ford's not here anymore. DeForest Buckner is not here anymore. Dre Greenlaw is much, much older and much more banged up. Same thing with Fred Warner. Like, Nick Bosa, it's not the same. And so I just want everybody to acknowledge that, because I feel like they just hear, oh, Robert Saleh, yep, good, okay, we're all set. No.
Exactly. Even with a defensive coordinator that we know that the 49ers have had, like, it's going to look different this time around if he does eventually end up being the 49ers defensive coordinator, just because there's so many things that have changed. Like, the personnel has changed. Even the offense has changed, right? Like, and we know, like, complementary football is a thing. And there's been many times this season where the 49ers haven't complimented each other on both sides of the ball. And we've kind of seen how that has worked out and unraveled for them in certain games. And so, yeah, like, it would look very different So that's the thing that I fear about the 49ers, like, the comment that was said earlier, like wanting to run it back, because like I think the 49ers have to know, like, it isn't going to be the same even if you try to run it back.
Exactly. And it's, in some ways, it feels like this team has been trying to get back to Super Bowl 54 since they lost it. Like, they've been trying to run it back, trying to get it back. Like, no, you have to build something new. That is gone. You can't change the past. Whether the 49ers win the Super Bowl for the next 15 years, they'll never be able to get the 2 back that they lost to Kansas City. Those are gone forever. And sometimes it feels like they're chasing ghosts a little bit, and it's a little scary. You just got to move on. And I know it's hard to accept because there's a lot of should. I said to somebody this week, I can't remember, that should be a dirty word to the 49ers. They love to talk about what they should have, what they should have won, what their record should have been this year. It wasn't. You can't live in that world. What matters is what actually happens. Nobody cares what should. The Bills should be a football dynasty. Okay, guess what? They're not. All right? They're not. And nothing's going to change that except winning in the future. So that's what I want the 49ers to focus on. And in order to do that, they need to acknowledge their shortcomings. They need to acknowledge that it wasn't just injuries last year. From what I'm seeing on Twitter, and again, we haven't been able to watch it. From what I'm seeing on Twitter, they keep going back to the injuries. Why were you bad in the fourth quarter? Injuries. Why were the special teams bad? Injuries. It wasn't just injuries. And by the way, every team is injured, and you're going to get injured next year. Going into next year, just being like, we'll be better because we won't get hurt. It's not a plan. Hope is not a plan.
Yeah, I was seeing people mention that about, the injuries and the 49ers kind of blaming, not, for lack of a better word, blaming, how this season has gone due to injuries. And you can't possibly make that an excuse when you see teams like the Lions, even the Rams, who slipped into the playoffs as a wild card team, or no, they ended up winning the division.
They won the division, yep.
So, and yeah, like that was kind of unlikely at certain points in the season, even like a couple weeks ago. Like they were fighting for that spot. Why? Because they had a lot of early injuries in the season that they had to overcome. And, some of those guys came back, but it's just all to say, like, injuries are not an excuse. Maybe it's part of the reason, but like to continue to go back to that, I think is concerning. This, to me, like, this season was not like 2020. 2020 was because of injuries. This season, there was so much more that I think had to do with, how this season ended up going for the 49ers. So yeah, definitely. One thing we haven't really spoken about enough, like, I mean, we know that Brian Schneider, was fired earlier this week. Kyle and John confirmed that. But, we haven't talked too much about special teams. Now, John Lynch, Kyle Shanahan were asked about it, and I'm going to play this clip here so you guys can see what they had to say. It's kind of a long clip, but we'll play it.
I mean, what do you mean by I don't take interest in special teams?
Well, you say you're not watching the kicker tryouts and that kind of. I know they're all.
Let me help Kyle there. I would tell you, Kyle spends an inordinate amount of time.
Why can't Kyle talk?
All phases of our team, special teams.
He's right there.
Extremely important in the way we construct our rosters. We can, the time is there. Now in kicking, neither of us are kicking specialists, so we don't sit here and profess to know everything about kicking and things of that nature. But the time issue, I'm sorry to interrupt, Kyle, but he spends plenty of time there.
I just don't BS you guys.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you turned it around on me there. But no, I just don't BS you guys with that stuff. But to say, like, I mean, we spent some heavy draft picks on special teams players, which I think is investment. We spent some salary cap on guys. I mean, bringing guys like George Odom. Flanagan Fowles here these last couple of years. I mean, that's bringing back. Those are special teams decisions. Spent a third-round pick on a kicker. Making special teams changes is why special teams is important to me, because we do work at it. But it's it wasn't good enough this year. I don't put that just on Brian by any means. I mean, losing your kicker, losing your punter, when injuries do affect the roster, especially offense and defense.
And injuries.
But it did affect the most with special teams. And I think that was unfair to Brian and a tough situation to put him in. But I do think it's an avenue we can get better in, and you can't change the whole thing out. And so Brian ends up being the fall guy for that. And I really appreciate him. Like, he did have a real good 3 years here and worked his tail off and was very loyal to us and is a very good coach, and he'll bounce back on his feet and we'll be going against him soon, I'm sure. But no, special teams is part of football, and everything part of football is extremely important to us.
Shout out to John Chapman, who posted that clip for us all to see. Now, I thought it was interesting that he called Brian Schneider the fall guy. I mean, like 49ers fans have had fun with the term scapegoat as far as like, coaches, assistant coaches who have gotten, fired in recent seasons. But, for Kyle to say himself, like, yeah, he's the fall guy. It was interesting. But what did you take from that clip? Like, were you happy with it? I know you mentioned, John Lynch interjecting and not letting Kyle speak at first. I think sometimes he tries to protect Kyle from himself, because John Lynch is the, perfect media guy. And, Kyle could get a little agitated sometimes, that it does come across in his answers.
Yeah, I think Kyle was getting snarky. Lynch sensed it, and he jumped in to kind of signal Kyle, soften it, and then Kyle responded. But you can't sit here, Kyle, and get snarky when people say you don't care about special teams, when you're on record multiple times as saying all you ask of your special teams is to not screw it up. Like, yeah, it's on record. Just don't lose us the game. Just don't commit a turnover. Like, that's his stated public standard for the play of special teams. So it's only natural when people hear that and then hear you say, I didn't watch the freaking kicker warm up. And then when you tell Fox, the production crew of Fox, you have no idea what to even say to Jake Moody when he's struggling and suffering a crisis of confidence, that you don't know what to say other than make your kicks. What else are we supposed to believe other than you don't care about special teams?
Yeah. Yeah. And look, I think what he said too was true, that they have invested in special teams. Like, that isn't a lie. Like, putting a third-round pick for a kicker, that is certainly an investment, maybe an ill-advised one, but an investment nonetheless. Mm-hmm. And then all the, free agency moves that they did to strengthen, special teams, I think can't be ignored either. So, like, he does have a point, but I think maybe from the coaching standpoint, which again, like, we don't really have an idea how involved he is in meetings or, like, in the building, locker room, aside from what we hear, what he's told us, right? So I think there is some involvement there, and maybe, fans are kind of over exaggerating the Kyle doesn't care about special teams narrative, but I think there is something to it, even just a little bit. So yeah, you're right. And he said it and we acknowledged it. Like, their actions have shown that they've cared about special teams for sure. But there's a difference between drafting guys and signing guys and just saying, okay, guys, do your thing now. And then, there's a problem. I need to get personally involved to try and fix it. I think that's where some of the issues are with 49er fans and special teams. Yep, I definitely agree. I put this tweet up on the screen. Kyle Shanahan said, quote, I plan on being with Brock here the entire time I'm here. We're capable of winning the Super Bowl with him. We almost did. I know he's capable of getting the Niners a Super Bowl in the future, end quote. So it kind of feels like Kyle knows that his future with the 49ers is directly tied to Brock Purdy, and he's fine with that because he has a lot of confidence in Brock, clearly.
They better be close to a contract, because the Niners seem to be giving Brock Purdy all sorts of leverage here. Brock's agents got to love these comments. Great.
He's like printing all these tweets out as we speak, probably.
Absolutely.
And another thing that was mentioned, John Lynch said the 49ers will release Javon Hargrave with a post-June 1st designation. So I know a lot of people at some point will be asking, when are the 49ers going to release Javon Hargrave? You said it was going to happen post June 1st. Well, I think they could do it before June 1st, but with the designation still, right? So they could, I think, make of course, the decision, but also have it processed officially post June 1st. So that's what they're doing here.
Yeah, least kept. I mean, it was the worst kept secret ever. They restructured his deal specifically to make it easier to make him a June 1st cut. So that's good. Glad that he confirmed it. Always like to hear more information. I saw that they expect Deebo Samuel back in 2025. And here's the part that bugs me. Debo is under contract. Do you expect him back? Kyle said, yep. Or John Lynch said, yeah, he's a good player. He's done a ton for this organization. We're not in the business of letting good players out of here. He's not a good player anymore. He's not. He had 3 touchdowns. Okay. He had 1 more touchdown than Ricky Pearsall had. And Ricky Pearsall almost died before the season began. Like, he's not a good player anymore. And he's so overpaid. He's expensive and he's not a good player. You don't know what kind of shape he's going to show up in. You don't know what kind of effort he's going to give, drive to drive, seemingly. He's not a good player, and I don't think he's a good captain either.
If they're not in the business of letting go good players, then they should have offered Dre Greenlaw the contract he wanted already. In fact, as it stands right now, well, maybe I shouldn't say that because I just with the assumption that Dre Greenlaw's health is in, fair condition well enough, I would have Dre Greenlaw come back rather than Deebo Samuel if I had to choose, if it came to that, right? Like, I just think that's where, this team is at. I mean, anything can change, right? Like, they could just be saying this at this point. He is still under contract. Usually when a player is still under contract, you kind of have to say things like this because, the expectation is that he's going to be back with the team. But anything can change. I'm sure it would not shock me if around draft time, like we've heard the last couple of seasons, we hear Deebo Samuel involved in trade discussions and the 49ers are looking for a second, 3rd round pick.
Next month at the Combine, we'll hear about it. I'm sure we will. What a team is planning to do in January can change a lot before the fall. I just remember the Vikings had no intent to trade Percy Harvin. And then 2 weeks later, he was gone. What they plan to do is meaningless. So even if they said he's definitely going to be back in 2025, they could trade him a week from now and say, well, we never expected to get the offer that we got for him. So it doesn't really, I wouldn't say that Deebo Samuel is any more likely to be on the team now than he was yesterday.
Yeah. At the end of the day, money talks or, draft picks talk certainly. And so, yeah, if the 49ers did get a really good offer, they couldn't refuse. Anything can happen. We know that. And so, yeah, we'll see what happens, in these coming weeks with some of these, decisions. As of right now, it seems like some decisions have been made, but we know some can certainly change in the next couple of weeks. But man, this has been an eventful presser to say the least. I think we got a lot of answers or at least some quotes from topics that we were expecting to get. I'm not sure if the presser is completely over at this point, but they've kind of answered most of the questions I would have had for them. Was there anything that you were hoping that they would get asked that we haven't heard of?
Without having heard the actual quotes, because I know people are tweeting highlights and stuff.
Yeah.
I want to know if Kyle will if he hires a new DC, will he let him pick all the coaches, or is Chris Kocurek definitely coming back next year, or all the Niners defensive guys coming back? And they may have addressed that. I don't know. We're just going off the quotes. That would be the only thing. Why should Jed York have any confidence that they can pick a DC at this point? He's fired 2 straight. That would be a question that I would have liked answered. But other than that, we did get a lot out of this, so I'm pretty happy.
How much involvement do you think Jed York, if any, he has in coordinator decisions? Because again, at this point, it's been a couple years now where you've had instability at defensive coordinator. Do you think he steps in at all, gives his 2 cents at the very least, or is he just you guys handle it, I trust you?
I think Jed just wants to be at the cool kids table. Please, can I be the room where you guys make decisions? I really do. I think that Jed just wants the cool kids to like him, and Kyle's one of the cool kids. God.
Yeah, he just wants to feel like he's involved. Let me get to a couple of these last super chats here. Daza said, Lions have 15 defensive players on IR. Yeah, that's the greatest example you can give as to why injuries are not an excuse. Daza said, team needs a culture change. Also, we finally need to invest heavily in the offensive line, particularly if they want to overpay Brock. Yeah, and this is something that even when they chose to pay Jimmy Garoppolo, I feel they did not do. So I don't have much hope that with a different quarterback, it's going to change. They did not really invest in offensive line with Jimmy. He dealt with a lot of injuries as well. in his time as quarterback. And you could argue that some of that has to do with the protection that he had to face. Of course, he's not as mobile in the pocket as like Brock is. So Brock good at avoiding sacks and hits and things like that. But do you think, if anything, that would make the 49ers think, oh, like Brock can move around in the pocket, like we're fine. We don't have to address offensive line like everyone wants us to, because he is helping our offensive line.
Yeah, I think that we may have to get lucky again. Like, yeah, they technically addressed the offensive line with Dominic Purdy last year, but they also got lucky that he ended up being a really good player. And I think that's the kind of investment we'll see in the offensive line. I think they will try and add some pieces, but I think it's going to be later round picks like that rather than first and second round. I could see them going defensive line in the first round. Second round, who knows? Maybe they go linebacker. Maybe they go running back. I mean, the running back room is definitely up in the air, but I think the offensive line pieces will be third, fourth, fifth round, that type of thing.
Yep. And the last super chat here. Yeah, Mayoko did report, as Kyle said, that Staley could get a shot at defensive coordinator. And just to recap before we get out of here, the last the main points from this presser. Kyle Shanahan is open to anything regarding new defensive schemes. So that is a good sign, of course. And, you know, so wholesale changes are possible for first time in this regime. Great. Clay Kubiak will be promoted to offensive coordinator. 49ers are adamant on keeping Deebo Samuel. And the 49ers are interested in retaining Javon Hargrave, but cap constraints dictated prelim move to release him ultimately. So, yeah, an eventful presser for the 49ers, as we expected it to be. There's going to be so much more news to come on, you know, defensive coordinator search, who's going to be the special teams coordinator to come. And we're going to have it here on our channel. So make sure you like this video. Make sure you subscribe to the channel, not just mine, Steph49K, but Rob as well, Gold Standard Network. Audio listeners, leave a rating, leave a review. And I just want to, you know, extend a thank you to Rob, because he's been joining me on this show every Wednesday on my channel, the Way Back Wednesday show. It hasn't been the season that we had hoped it would be, Rob, but, you know, I always appreciate your opinions, your difference of opinions. And, you know, I love that you are, you know, you don't stray away from what you believe and your opinions. And I love that about you, because I think it makes for a great entertaining show. So thank you so much for always joining, you know, me on 49 Carats. It's been great to have you.
Oh, thank you, Steph. I appreciate that. I'm honored that you are interested in having me on the show. You know, maybe the real championship or the friendships we made along the way. You know?
I don't know. I think I'd rather have a Super Bowl than be your friend, but but I think that's a great part to end the show. No, seriously, Rob, thank you so much. And thank you to everyone that tuned in. You guys kept it popping in the live chat. Appreciate you all. For now, have a good rest of your Wednesday, folks. We'll be back live tomorrow. For now, peace.